Hello, I'm Bob Fish, Genealogist General of the SAR. Welcome to the second edition of Genealogy FAQ. Frequently asked questions that we ask you, perhaps you're asking us, or perhaps we should be asking. It'll be a nice short discussion. Let's get underway. Genealogy FAQ. This is our second session. The topic is overview of genealogy policies. We are going to have a series of these talks. They're going to be fairly short. They're going to be hopefully interesting to you. We'll keep them short. Maybe that will help encourage it. I invited you to these talks because you're one of the most knowledgeable people in the SAR about genealogy. I've invited the SAR staff, the SAR Genealogy Committee, the registrars, both state and chapter, and the Liberty Award Medal recipients of 2021. Each one of you are very important to our process. The staff reviews all the applications before they get passed to the registrar for entry. The Genealogy Committee, as I'll explain later, sets the policies for the genealogy staff and the genealogist general to work under. The registrars, both state and chapter, you're the people who handle the applications. You receive them, you look over them, you address any deficiencies in them, and then you pass them on. You're essential to the review that we have. And then our Liberty Award recipients, people who received a Liberty Medal for bringing in 10 or more members during the past period. That can be a continuing period. If you got 6 one year and 4 the next, then you'll get a Liberty Medal the second year. Many people have additional Liberty Medals even in 1 year, and I'm happy to say that our Liberty Medal honorees accounted for 65% of the new members that we have brought into the SAR. That's a fantastic accomplishment, and I thank each of you for it. The meeting is being recorded. Everyone's on mute. The number of attendees at this moment is 70, and so you can see that we can't handle questions on air, but you are invited to submit your questions to me. My email is bob@bfish.org. If you submit a question during the live presentation or from the recorded invitation, you will get a reply as soon as I can have time to be back at my computer and respond to them. I attempt to make all the replies within a day or so after I receive the email. Also, everyone's invited to submit topics for future meetings. It's by knowing your interest in these that we can determine whether or not we'll continue to have them on basically one every other month. This is the Genealogy Policy Manual. Current policies are online. If you go to the SAR website and search for Genealogy Policies, it'll bring up this manual. The genealogy policies govern the staff review and the genealogist general review of applications. However, we review them, tweak them, make additions to them as need go by at regular meetings of the Genealogy Committee. The genealogy policies are only 20 pages long. You can easily read through it all in a half hour. I recommend that everybody who's on this call, and a lot of people who aren't, should read the policies over and become familiar with them. Let's cover 10. The first and most important, the genealogist general shall examine all applications and shall approve those found in accordance with the policies. Now, I don't think you'll be surprised to learn that I don't actually examine all the applications. I delegate that to the genealogy staff. They make a first review and they approve those in accordance with the policies. As genealogist general, I have the responsibility of reviewing those on which there is an appeal. That is, if you don't agree with the decision of the staff, you can appeal to the genealogist general, and I will decide who's correct and whether the application should be granted. Oh, there's also an application preparation manual. The application preparation manual is also on the website. If you search for application preparation manual on the SAR website in the search box, it will take you to that page. The application preparation manual is a guide and contains many, many helpful suggestions, including ways to look through your application and make sure it meets the genealogical proof standard. It's 54 pages, and you probably don't need all of them right away. But I do recommend that you look through the guide, become familiar with what's in it, so that when a issue comes up, you'll know that it's covered in the genealogy policies, and you can look it up and download the most recent edition from online. The first to look at is the grandfather policy. Bylaw number 1, section 5, covers close relatives whose applications might not pass approval today. As I go throughout this, I am going to be calling out the references that each of the statements made, where you can find them in either bylaws or SAR policies, and look them up for yourself if you want to see them in any more detail or actually see them written out. If a member has joined in the past and a close relative now wants to join under their application, if the application might not pass review today, brothers, sons, grandsons, nephews, and great-nephews can be admitted, but your application cannot be used for reference in the future by anyone else joining. This way, eventually, we'll purge out all of the questionable applications from the past and make them available to you, but we'll point out where the issues may be, and that way the person can perhaps review, a person admitted can review them and update them. If there was a missing piece of information, you can add it, and yours will become part of the approval process by having the grandfather issue removed if you desire. If you don't desire, you can be a full member just like anyone else. Let's take a look at the elements of a membership application. The Constitution says that a member must be a lineal descendant of an ancestor who demonstrated loyalty to the American cause. That means that an application must have 2 components: lineage and service. Proof that you're a lineal descendant of a patriot. Of course, that means a biological descendant, not related through aunts or uncles, and not adopted. And you must show that your lineage back to a patriot who had adequate service in the Revolution. Let's take a look at a few parts of that now. Lineage requires a person to be male, good repute in the community, and a lineal descendant of a patriot, not adopted, or descendant of uncles and aunts. And it also denies membership to persons who advocate the overthrow of the U.S. government. It's in our Constitution. There are service limiting dates. Generally, 19 April 75 to 23 November 83, from basically Lexington and Concord to Evacuation Day. There are exceptions that exist to these that are written out, and you can find a few that I'm not going to discuss right now. The Battle of Point Pleasant, limited to that place and that day only. Committees on safety and other groups that were formed as early as 1 year before the date of Lexington and Concord. These committees on safety and others were vital to the colonial cause. And of course, we count that service as being important, but it's also important to note that we back the date up by a year. Boston Tea Party was 16 December of 73. That's included, and several other historic events are included. They're in policy 2.3000 and immediately following. One way of proving service is by payment of taxes. The SAR is a leader in doing this, thanks to some very important work done by John Sinks when he was Genealogist General. Search on the SAR website for taxes. However, it's not just paying regular taxes or and the like that's important. The tax that's paid must have addressed a request by the Continental Congress or have the purpose of supporting the war or achieving independence. The burden of proof is on the applicant. However, under the page on our website, you'll find a number of taxes which have been already verified as meeting these requirements, and some tax lists that obtain information about the people paying them. These are very valuable, especially in Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia, and North Carolina. If you're patriots from there, take a look. You may have a gold mine. Disloyal service qualifies any prior service that was acceptable for membership. So if the last act of the person is desertion or other disloyal activities, that disqualifies all previous loyal persons from membership. The genealogical proof standards are addressed in this book by the National Association of Genealogists. The genealogical proof standard is not proof beyond all reasonable doubt. It does, though, require more proof more than preponderance of evidence. Beyond a reasonable doubt is the standard used in criminal cases, and preponderance of evidence is used in civil cases, and we think it should be somewhere between the two. The evidence should be of sufficient power to convince a reasonable, unbiased person, stated in the application preparation manual. I like the quote that's written below. I'll read it. Accuracy is fundamental to genealogical research. Without it, a family's history would just be fiction. The genealogical proof argument is a statement put together, and I recommend that you use it even when it's not absolutely required. The elements of a genealogical proof argument are that you first of all, have exhaustive search for the evidence and compile and put together accurate the information with accurate source citations. That usually occurs. The first part that frequently falls down in presenting these is analysis and correlation of the collected information. You have to pull it all together and say, here's why some information should be given less or no weight, and how some gives more weight. This is extremely important, and a reason that I recommend the use of a genealogical proof argument when you're putting your application together. If there's some doubt that you have, this is your opportunity to speak to the genealogist and explain why your line of thought is the correct one and not how it might appear on the surface of the information. You're required to present a review of any conflicting evidence, and then presentation of a soundly worded, coherently written conclusion. Again, these are very powerful in getting your application approved because it allows you to say why you've got the right case and why someone else looking at it quickly might not see that. What to list on an application. The SAR policy is only information for which a proof is given should be listed on the application. Names, of course, have three parts of them: first, middle, and last name. Dates are date, month, and year. Places are city, county, and state. If you don't have proof for a name, a date, or a place, don't list it. If you have proof for only part of a name, date, or place, list the parts only that you have information for. If you fail to do that, that information will be bracketed or removed from the application. Here would be an application that uses the minimalist approach. This has my name on it, and then I go to my parents' names. I know much more information that's listed on this, but I'm showing how it might be presented in a minimalist approach. If I was going through my mother's line, I might leave off my father's date of birth and place of birth. It's not required. However, all this information is requested that you be proved to prove both spouses at each step of the application. But if you don't have it, some people simply don't know it. Others may not have the proof documents for it. If you don't know it, don't list it. Again, however, information on both spouses and their dates and places is requested if you know it. The next one is use of DAR applications in supporting your application. A DAR application may be used and cited to cover a great deal of the application. And this is especially useful in the older generations of your application. The DAR application must have been approved after 1/185 and covers only the corresponding names, dates, places, and services that are shown on your application. It does not apply to any applications proven to be incorrect by DAR, SAR, or CAR. Those are listed on the appropriate documents. And of course, if you've used the DAR application system, you'd be very familiar with their showing up the red marks that indicate, for example, future applicants must prove correct service or if there's an error in the lineage, correct lineage. I note in the latter, however, that would not apply. That would not be a problem if your lineage is a different one than that application had. For example, it could have been that the error was in the 7th generation and you're using only the 8th and 9th for entry. That would not be a problem. Listed among inadmissible sources are published accounts that are not either contemporary with the persons being listed or have sources that can readily be listed and obtained. So published accounts, and we're all familiar with family histories and local histories that were in many cases knowingly had fiction put in them just because the person writing it didn't know or thought they knew or someone told them that. That's not what we have for a standard, and approving anything less than that would be a disservice to our members. Also, the pages printed from the SAR Patriot and Grave Search and the DAR genealogical search system are also not acceptable. You have to go to the underlying documents and submit those. Let's cover 3 items real quickly. Paper for proofs must be on 8.5 by 11 or 8.5 by 14 paper. This means that if you have an item being submitted that's on small paper, you can submit it, but it must be copied onto 8.5 by 11. That paper need not be the SAR watermarked paper, however. The application, though, must be on SAR official watermarked paper. Persons aged 12 and over are considered to be adults for the purpose of determining Revolutionary service. Fifers and drummers, boys having service, and young people taken as captives by the British are all considered to be rendering revolutionary service. You can find further details in the policies as written out here. 12 and over. The DNA proofs. DNA is currently an item that's everyone's talking about, and very few people really understand it yet. It is currently limited to having generation 1 to 2. In other words, proving the identity of your parents if there's a reason that you need to use DNA to do that, such as adoption. Generation 1 to 2 only. And please remember from the last time, make sure when you're submitting DAR record copy, that's the record copy, not the chapter copy, submitting the DAR record copy, that you submit the record copy correctly sized for your printer. Make sure that the entire document is printed, either the reduced size if you're printing on 8.5 by 11, or the full one using 8.5 by 14 paper, because the DAR and SAR applications originally were printed on 8.5 by 14 paper. Include all documentation. If it's listed on the reference section of your application, it must be included. Finally, check that for readability. We talked about this. Basically, the rule is if you can't read it easily, the staff probably can't read it either. And you can either find a way of enhancing the readability of the copy you have, or providing a transcript to it and providing the original document as well. To conclude, the Genealogy Policy Manual contains the rules that bind the actions of the staff and my actions as Genealogist General in reviewing applications. The Application Preparation Manual is a copy of best practices, and many common issues are covered in the Application Preparation Manual, and I recommend that you become familiar with them. Appeals, where the staff takes a position and you conclude that you can't agree with their position, can be appealed to the Genealogist General, and I will decide those actions. Policy 9 in the bylaws cover it in further detail. So, thanks very much for your participation. You can send any questions or suggestions for future sessions to me. My email address is bob@bfish.org. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Please send me your questions or suggestions. This is Genealogy FAQ number 2. I'm Bob Fish, Genealogist General of the SAR. Thank you for listening.